Your grief is not a setback, it's your unfair advantage. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by introducing you to someone whose name you need to know, whose story you need to hear, and whose wisdom just might shatter every assumption you've ever held about what it means to be resilient. Her name is Willisce Hylton, and Willis is not just surviving. She is redefining what it means to lead, to heal, and to build something profoundly meaningful in the face of unimaginable loss. She is a force, a truth teller, a living testament to the fact that our deepest wounds, the ones we hide, the ones we're ashamed of, the ones we think disqualify us, those wounds can become our greatest sources of power. Willis Hilton is making the world a better place, not in spite of her pain, but because of it. And today I want to share what she taught me because it will change you. Let me ask you something. When you hear the word resilience, what comes to mind? Maybe it's the entrepreneur who lost their first business and bounced back stronger. Maybe it's the athlete who tore their ACL and returned to the field with a vengeance. Maybe it's the executive who got fired and then launched a startup that made millions. We love those stories, don't we? The comeback, the pivot, the glow up, the underdog who rises. And those stories are real. They matter, they inspire. I'm not here to diminish them. But here's what we don't talk about enough. Here's what gets left out of the highlight reel, out of the LinkedIn posts, out of the motivational quotes plastered across Instagram with perfectly filtered sunsets in the background. What about the resilience that's forged not in boardrooms or pitch meetings, but in hospital rooms? What about the strength that's built not after a failed product launch, but after bearing a child? What about the drive that emerges not from losing a deal, but from surviving a stroke? And then another one while the world keeps spinning and expecting you to show up like nothing happened? What about the entrepreneur who's building an empire while simultaneously grieving a loss so profound that most people would have stopped breathing? That's the resilience Willisce Hylton knows. And that's the resilience we need to talk about. Because here's the truth, and it's a truth that doesn't fit neatly into hustle culture or motivational memes, or the sanitized version of success we've been sold. Resilience in entrepreneurship, especially for Black professionals, especially for Black women, is not just about bouncing back from business failures. It's forged in personal tragedies that most people will never see, never acknowledge, and certainly never celebrate. It's forged in grief so profound that it rewires your entire sense of purpose. It's forged in loss so deep that it either breaks you completely or it becomes the fuel that powers everything you do next. Willis Hilton has lived this, and what she taught me, what I want to share with you today, is that the most powerful entrepreneurs, the most impactful leaders, the ones who truly change the game, are often the ones who've walked through fire that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with survival. Let me be clear, I'm not romanticizing pain. I'm not saying you need to suffer to succeed. I'm not suggesting that trauma is a prerequisite for greatness. What I am saying is this: when we only celebrate the business comeback, when we only applaud the professional pivot, we erase the lived reality of so many Black professionals who are building empires while simultaneously rebuilding themselves. We ignore the fact that some of the most brilliant minds in entrepreneurship are operating with grief as their co pilot. We miss the opportunity to learn from a kind of resilience that is deeper, rawer, more transformative than anything a failed startup could ever teach you. So, let's talk about what Willis Hilton taught me. Let's talk about three insights that will shift how you think about resilience, leadership, and what it really takes to build something that lasts. Three insights that will challenge you to see your own pain differently. Three insights that might just save your life. The first insight is this: embrace grief as fuel. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive. We're taught to move past grief, to process it, to heal from it, to let it go. And yes, healing is essential. But what Willis showed me is that grief, when honored, when held with intention, when treated not as an obstacle, but as a teacher, can become one of the most clarifying forces in your life. Personal losses, whether it's losing children, surviving health crises like strokes, or enduring heartbreak in the middle of devastation, these experiences don't just wound you, they redefine your purpose. They strip away everything that doesn't matter. They obliterate the superficial. They give you a clarity and a tenacity that no business school, no mentor, no amount of success can ever provide. Think about it. When you face the kind of loss that shatters your world, when you've had to rebuild your sense of self from the ground up, the stakes change. The fear of failure, it shrinks. The need for external validation, it fades. The pressure to perform, it becomes secondary to the deeper question, what am I here to do that actually matters? Grief, when embraced, becomes fuel, not the frantic, burnout inducing hustle that we're so used to celebrating, but a steady, unshakable drive rooted in purpose. It's the kind of fuel that doesn't run out because it's not about proving something to the world. It's about honoring what you've survived and building something that reflects the depth of that survival. Willisce Hylton embodies this, and so many Black professionals do, quietly, without fanfare, without the world ever knowing the weight they carry. They're not just building businesses, they're building legacies out of loss. They're turning the most painful chapters of their lives into the most powerful chapters of their work. They're showing up every single day, carrying grief that would flatten most people, and they're still creating, still leading, still rising. And here's what nobody tells you: that kind of resilience, the kind born from profound loss, it outpaced traditional hustle culture narratives every single time. Because hustle culture is built on external motivation, grief fueled purpose, that's internal, that's unshakable. That's the kind of drive that doesn't need a motivational speaker or a vision board to keep it going. It's already lit from within. The second insight is this: build vulnerability into leadership. Now, this one's tricky because we've been taught, especially as Black professionals, especially as Black women, that vulnerability is a liability. That if you show your wounds, people will see you as weak. That if you share your struggles, you'll lose respect, lose opportunities, lose your seat at the table. And let's be real, in a world that already underestimates us, that already questions our competence, that already makes us work twice as hard for half the recognition, vulnerability feels like a risk we can't afford. But here's what Willis taught me: vulnerability, when shared with intention, is not a weakness, it's a magnet. It's what creates authentic connections, it's what attracts the kind of loyal networks, the kind of ride or die communities that are essential for Black entrepreneurs navigating bias systems. When you share your story, when you let people see the breakup that happened while you were grieving, the strokes that knocked you down but didn't knock you out, the losses that could have ended you but instead redirected you, you give others permission to do the same. You create a space where people don't have to pretend, where they don't have to perform strength, where they can show up as whole human beings, wounds and all, and still be seen as powerful. And that kind of leadership, that kind of authenticity, it builds trust in a way that polished resumes and perfect pitches never will. It creates loyalty, it creates community, it creates movements. Willisce Hylton understands this deeply. And it's why the work she does, the impact she has, resonates so profoundly because she's not leading from a place of perfection. She's leading from a place of truth. And in a world that's starving for authenticity, that's revolutionary. Think about the leaders you admire most, not the ones with the shiniest accolades or the biggest bank accounts, the ones who moved you, the ones who made you feel seen, the ones who made you believe that you could do it too. I'd bet money that those leaders shared something real, something raw, something that made them human. That's the power of vulnerability in leadership. It doesn't weaken your authority, it deepens it. It doesn't make people question your competence, it makes them trust you more because they know you're not pretending. They know you've been through something, and they know that if you can rise, so can they. The third insight is this: prioritize recovery for sustained impact. Here's where we get it wrong. We celebrate the grind, we celebrate the hustle, we celebrate the entrepreneur who works 18-hour days, who sacrifices sleep, who pushes through pain, who never stops. And we call that dedication, we call that commitment, we call that success. But what Willisce taught me is that strategic pauses, intentional recovery, especially after trauma, are not optional. They're essential. Because burnout doesn't just hurt you, it limits your impact, it shortens your runway, it turns what could have been a marathon into a sprint that ends in collapse. When you've survived strokes, when you've endured profound loss, when your body and your mind have been through hell, rest is not laziness. Rest is strategy. Recovery is not weakness. Recovery is what allows you to show up for the long game. It's what prevents the kind of burnout that takes you out of the fight entirely. And here's the thing: this applies to all of us, not just those who faced medical crisis. In these circumstances, we are all operating in systems that demand too much, that extract too much, that glorify exhaustion. And if we don't build recovery into our leadership, into our entrepreneurship, into our lives, we won't last. We won't be able to sustain the impact we're here to make. Willisce Hylton gets this. And it's why she's still here, still building, still leading, because she understands that taking a pause, that honoring your need for rest, that protecting your peace is not giving up. It's gearing up. It's ensuring that you have the stamina, the clarity, the energy to keep going, not just for a season, but for a lifetime. Recovery is how you ensure that your grief fueled purpose doesn't burn out. It's how you protect the very thing that makes you powerful. And it's how you model for others, especially for Black women who've been taught that rest is a luxury they can't afford, that their well being matters just as much as their work. So let me bring this home. What Willisce Hylton taught me, what I hope you're hearing today, is that resilience is not just about bouncing back. It's about what you build with the pieces that remain. It's about turning grief into fuel, vulnerability into connection, and recovery into strategy. It's about redefining strength, not as the ability to keep going no matter what, but as the wisdom to pause, to heal, to honor your humanity, and then to rise with a purpose that's unshakable. And here's what I need you to understand: your pain is not a setback, it's not something to hide, it's not something to be ashamed of. Your pain, your loss, your survival, it's your unfair advantage. It's the thing that makes you see the world differently. It's the thing that gives you a depth of empathy, a clarity of vision, a fierceness of purpose that people who've only known comfort will never have. And when you embrace that, when you stop trying to sanitize your story and start owning it, when you let your grief fuel your work instead of silencing it, you don't just change your life, you change the trajectory of everyone watching. You give permission, you create possibility. You prove that rising is not reserved for the unbroken. It's for those of us who've been shattered and chose to rebuild anyway. So here's my challenge to you: what hidden pain from your past could you reframe today as your greatest entrepreneurial superpower? What loss, what trauma, what heartbreak have you been carrying in silence, thinking it disqualifies you, when in reality, it's the very thing that makes you unstoppable? And here's the action step. This week, I want you to share one piece of your story with someone in your network, not the polished version, not the sanitized, LinkedIn approved version, the real version, the messy, painful, human version. Share it with intention, share it to create connection, share it to give someone else permission to do the same. Because when you do that, you're not just being vulnerable, you're leading, you're building the kind of community that Black professionals desperately need. You're proving that we don't have to choose between being powerful and being human. We can be both. We are both. Willisce Hylton is proof of that. And so are you. Now go. Take that pain you've been hiding and turn it into power. Take that grief you've been carrying and let it fuel the most important work of your life. And when you rise, and you will rise, bring someone with you, because that's how we change the world. Not by pretending we're unbreakable, but by showing the world exactly how we put ourselves back together and daring them to do the same. Thank you.